Still with the St. Louis District EOC. Thank you so much for joining us tonight in this rather interesting weather night. Luckily, we have the Weather Service on. They'll be doing a presentation. But before we get to those, I'd like to provide some Webex instructions for anybody who needs them. If you're participating via Webex, the audio works best if you have Webex call your phone rather than using your computer microphone. How you do this is at the audio option at the bottom of the screen, you can insert your phone number and hit Connect Audio. You are automatically muted upon login. If you'd like to speak, you can unmute by clicking the mute unmute button at the bottom of the page or by hitting *6. That's the star symbol and 6 on your phone. We ask that you mute again after speaking by again clicking the mute button or *6. We also ask that you turn your camera off to conserve bandwidth. You can click the camera icon, Start Video, at the bottom of the page, and there should be a red line through it when your camera is turned off. In lieu of a roll call, we ask that you put your name, title, and affiliation in the chat box. You can also ask questions and make comments in the chat box. If you're participating only by telephone, you can unmute your phone by hitting *6. And again, we ask that you remute your phone after your question by hitting *6 again. After each presentation, we'll address the questions posted in the chat box and then ask if there are any other questions. Please start your questions on the phone by stating your name and affiliation. There will be an open discussion period after all of the presentations have concluded as well. We will ask if there's anyone who has participated only on the phone who would like to be recognized. The presentations, Webex recordings, and reference material, what we traditionally have as handouts at the face-to-face meetings, will be posted on our webpage, probably next week. We will have the webpage posted on screen during the open discussion period, and we'll read the address for those only on the phone. I'll do that now, but it's also on the screen. So the address for our webpage is https://www.mvs.usac.army.mil/emergency-operations, /flood-preparedness-meeting/. It is also up on screen if you are joining us via Webex. Is there anybody joining us only on the phone who would like to be recognized at this time? All right, hearing none. What we're going to do today, I'll go over briefly the agenda very quickly. We'll see if we have any district leadership on the phone for a welcome. Then the Weather Service, Mark Fuchs, Mary Lamb, and Darren Hansing will be providing the spring forecast. And then I'll throw it over to the local, state, and regional EMs if they want to say anything. I will talk about the Corps' flood response and recovery. Amanda Goltz will talk about the Levee Safety Program. Jeff Wells, our new ICW 408 coordinator, will be talking about 408 permits. Liz Nornburns, who is detailing behind Shane Simmons, who has been out on paternity leave, will talk about the PL 8499 repair update. And then we'll throw it over to Sean Sullivan and Eddie Brower to talk about some of the new initiatives or initiatives that may be of interest to people on the phone, including our Upper Mississippi River initiatives and our Engineering with Nature. So I will find out if, did the Colonel and Lieutenant Colonel join us? We also have on the line Susan Wilson, our top civilian in the district. Susan, would you like to welcome everybody?
Certainly, Kathy. Thank you. Susan Wilson, Deputy District Engineer. Appreciate everyone joining in tonight for the meeting. Looking forward to lots of good presentation discussions. So appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Yes, I'd like to also welcome everybody and thank you for joining us tonight. I know we're all here for the spring forecast from the Weather Service, so I will throw it over to Mark Fuchs.
All right, thank you, and welcome everybody. Let me share my screen here. And it says you guys will stop sharing content as soon as I start. So here we go. And okay, it's coming. Just like Easter is coming. I'm going to hang on and wait until it pops up here before talking about nothing on your screen. Can you guys see that now?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Here we go. My name is Mark Fuchs. I'm the service hydrologist with the Weather Service in St. Louis. And as Kathy mentioned, we have Darren Hansing from the forecast office in Lincoln and Mary Lamb with the forecast office down in Paducah to talk about their ends of the St. Louis district. All right, bottom line up front, the Mississippi River is expecting minor flooding likely between Hannibal and Alton, as it pretty much is expected every year. The odds of those places between Hannibal and Alton, including Louisiana, Clarksville, Winfield, Grafton, is an annual event. It basically is, it's not a guarantee, but it's likely. Chances are above average, above 50%, that the Mississippi and those locations will flood. But this year, it's not likely upstream of Hannibal, and those flood probabilities are below normal. Speaking of below normal, the Missouri River, flooding is not likely at any forecast point. I've been at the St. Louis office for 15 years, and I'm not sure I remember any year where that actually happened, where the likelihood of flooding was less than 50% at each and every point that we forecast for on the Missouri. So that's an unusual year, and we'll see why in a minute. The Illinois River, minor flooding is likely by early May. And again, that's fairly a routine event as far as spring flooding goes. But the odds of minor flooding are only a little bit above normal down around Beardstown, and that in all likelihood will translate to an above normal likelihood as well at LaGrange, Lock and Dam, Meridosha, and Valley City, Illinois. Local tributaries near to below average flood risk with flooding unlikely in most locations across our service areas. Okay, the factors we look at for spring flooding are essentially fourfold. Number one, recent precipitation in major river basins. Number two is snowpack in major river basins and the amount of water that is in that snowpack specifically. Number three is soil moisture in those basins. And number four, what the current flow is at each point that we are putting the outlook out for. That's a key thing that is going to change here in the next week. In fact, it's changing as we speak. Okay, the first thing is precipitation that we've had across Missouri, across the Missouri Basin, on up to about Yankton, South Dakota, where Gavin's Point Dam is located, and upstream into the Mississippi River Basin across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and northern Illinois. We've had, this isn't kind of a normal distribution. You usually see less than less precipitation up toward Minnesota and the Dakotas than you do south of the Ohio River. But this year, let's see how it compares to what we usually see on average. And really, the entire plains, Nebraska, Kansas, up into South Dakota, looking at below normal precipitation over the last 3 months. And that's true pretty much all the way across Missouri and Illinois, at least before this storm, actually including this storm. No, it doesn't include this storm. This is effective as of yesterday. It didn't include last night's rainfall or today's rain and snow across Missouri and Illinois. But notice down around southeast Missouri and into Kentucky, things are actually above normal there. So there's a pretty good disparity between what they ended up with and what we typically see across the upper Mississippi Basin and into the Missouri River Basin. Okay, calculated soil moisture ranking does show dryness as a result of that lack of precipitation. And this was pretty much the case heading into the late fall when you know the soils tend to freeze up. Whatever you wind up with in December because of frozen soils is pretty much what you wind up with some variation, but there's not much change in that soil moisture content between December and February. In this case, we do see very dry conditions across Kansas and Nebraska and into western North Dakota, parts of South Dakota, but especially across Montana and into Wyoming and eastern Colorado, where things have gotten really dry over the last few months. Stream flows across Missouri and Illinois. We're looking at, after today's rain and snow across Missouri, as you might imagine, things are above normal, especially across southeast Missouri, where most of the precipitation did fall as rain. And we did have some flooding. We'll show that to you in a minute. And look at Illinois, practically the entire state, except for the far northern part of Illinois, even the Chicagoland area, looking at above normal stream flows right now for this time of the year. This isn't what it looked like even yesterday. So this is all the result of the precipitation we've had in the last 18 hours or so. Okay, let's take a look at how that stream flow has evolved. On the Missouri River at Hermann, notice how it was, pretty close to near normal last fall, but then dropped off quite a bit in November. And we've been bordering on the low end of normal or dropping into the below the 24th percentile at Hermann. And that's true as well at Jefferson City, upstream at Jefferson City, and downstream at Washington and St. Charles. On the Illinois River at Valley City, on the other hand, stream flow was well above normal last summer and into the fall, but dropped back into the realm of near normal stream flows during the winter months. And that's where we are right now on the Illinois River at Valley City. So they're actually where they're used to being. And since they usually see some flooding most every year, the odds of that area getting minor flooding are pretty good this year. And so we go down to the Mississippi River at St. Louis, and kind of a similar story. They do have the dry inflow coming in from the Missouri, but it's not as dry in the main stem Mississippi. And of course, the Illinois River coming in with that normal flow is helping the Mississippi at St. Louis stay fairly close to normal over the winter. It did drop down close to that 25th percentile, but stayed just barely within the normal realm throughout the winter. And finally, as we go down to Thebes, again, a similar story, not much inflow, significant inflow between St. Louis and Thebes, but we do see the fact that it dropped down to near that 25th percentile earlier this month, but then started climbing with recent precipitation. First round of precipitation was the snowstorm we had around here the first week of February. And of course, we're getting some more of that across Missouri and Illinois today. So here's the a big factor in our spring flood outlook: the soil or the snow water equivalent across the plains and into the upper Mississippi Valley. First, let me talk about the upper Mississippi Valley. It's they have a fair amount of water in the snowpack across northern Minnesota. In fact, the northwest half of Minnesota pretty much is above normal on snow water equivalent as of a few days ago. Now, some of that has eroded since Monday, but still a fair amount of snowpack, the northern 2/3 of Minnesota. But once you get south of, say, about St. Cloud, it goes the other direction with below normal snowpack and below normal snow water equivalent or content in that snow. Similar story across Wisconsin, below normal snow water content across the cheese state there. And further south, you see the results of today's snow event across southeastern Kansas, much of Missouri, and into Illinois. And that snow is spreading south tonight as we speak. It's the reason many of us are doing this at home today. Moving further west to look at the Missouri Basin, notice how dry and how barren things are of snow across much of Kansas, Nebraska, and especially South Dakota and eastern Montana. And things are well below normal across eastern Colorado and eastern Wyoming. Many of these places did get some fresh snow today, but even after today's event, most areas well below what they usually see in mid-February. Okay, here's how things do compare to this time of the year. And as I said, the northwest, 2/3 of the state of Minnesota looking at above normal snow water content. But if you look at the southeastern half or so of the state of Minnesota, things are actually below normal into that part of the Mississippi Basin. And that's also the case across most of the state of Wisconsin, the eastern 2/3 of Iowa, and across northern Illinois, except for the fact that they did get more snow today, which would change things across parts of Illinois and Missouri. All right, let's look at the CPC, Climate Prediction Center, 6 to 10 day outlook. This is getting interesting. We're looking at below normal temperatures likely from February 22nd through 26th. If you're a fan of winter and the possibility of snow, check out how that couples with the precipitation outlook. We're looking at an above normal risk of precipitation in that 6 to 10 day outlook. Below normal temperatures, above normal precipitation spells wintertime precipitation for somebody. I don't know if that's going to be the St. Louis area or not, but we are going to be keeping an eye on another storm system impacting our area next week. Looking ahead to week 2, February 24th through the 2nd of March, we're firmly in the below normal category as far as temperatures are concerned. But look at precipitation. Again, we're looking at a likelihood of a slight likelihood of above normal precipitation. That's not to say we're going to get a whole lot of anything, but the chance of us getting a wintertime precipitation or wintry precipitation is pretty good. All right, the 90-day outlook from March through May. This is the latest we have. Actually, it's not, but this is what we had as of earlier in the week. We are looking at above normal temperatures across Missouri and Illinois, and above normal precipitation is favored for Missouri and Illinois as well. The spring flood outlook. These are all the forecast points across the St. Louis district that have probabilities assigned to them based on those 4 factors: snow content in those basins, stream flow, recent precipitation, and soil moisture. And if it's green, it has a less than 50% chance of flooding. Well, you can see that is the case at every point along the Missouri River in our area, starting from Jefferson City, going eastward through Hermann, down through Washington, and down to St. Charles. All have a below 50% chance of flooding. A little different on the Mississippi. It is below 50% upstream of Hannibal, but above 50% likelihood of flooding which is normal for this for the spring season, any spring season, at downstream of Hannibal through Saverton, Clarksville, Winfield, on down through Grafton and Alton. Then it's below normal again at St. Louis and above normal at Chester with the lower flood stage down there. And it's also above normal for Cape Girardeau as well. All right, let's take a look at the individual sites. For anybody interested in the Missouri River at Hermann, let me explain what these colors represent first. The blue curve represents the historical probabilities over the last 30 years or so of seeing flooding. It's basically the raw statistics for seeing flooding. The black curve takes today's stream flow, today's soil moisture, today's snowpack content, and uses that as input, and uses the last 30 years or so of excuse me, somebody is knocking at the door here at my house, and I cannot answer the phone, and I'm not going to, but they're beginning to irritate me. Anyway, getting on with Hermann. So if that black curve is to the right of the blue curve, we are looking at a below normal risk of flooding. You might remember in 2019 and 2020, that black curve was to the left of the blue curve, which is an above normal risk of flooding around here. So we go to the Missouri River at Hermann so for a week-by-week analysis of what's going on. And you can see the flood probabilities rise as we get into the month of May. So they're very low to start with, and they get historically high as we get closer to May. But as you can see, there is not one week in there that has a likelihood of flooding. For the Mississippi at Louisiana, that black curve and that blue curve pretty much right on top of each other, slightly above historical risk of flooding at flood stage, but near normal on the moderate end of end of things, and actually a bit below normal on the historical side of major flooding. As we go to the week-by-week output, we see please close the door. Please close the door. Please close the door. Sorry about that. We see a week-by-week breakdown of very low flood probabilities. And as you can see, those probabilities increase. My apologies for that, everybody. We see an increase in probabilities as we get toward the beginning of May. So we go to St. Louis, we see flood probabilities below normal there as well. And at flood stage, it is a good 10% or so below likely or below historical averages for minor flooding, and well below on the moderate side of flooding there. On the week-by-week breakdown, we see the historical trend showing a greater likelihood of flooding as we get toward late April and early May. But again, as with Hermann, no one week has a likelihood of minor flooding. Okay, moving on to Beardstown, I get to take a break here, and Darren Hansing gets to talk about Beardstown and the rest of the Illinois River.
Yes, thanks, Mark. Yeah, as we look at Beardstown here, really can't get a whole lot closer to normal than what we see at this location. As you can see, the trend lines for the conditional simulation, the black line, are very close to the historical simulation with the blue. As we look at the minor flood category, we do see a slight elevation in probabilities, 87% compared to what's normally right around 80% likelihood for minor flooding. Moderate flooding pretty much spot on, and maybe slightly elevated for major, but nothing of any kind of significance. And we do typically, with these probabilities, we do see flooding along Beardstown and portions of the Illinois River each spring. Now, as we look at the week by week probabilities on the next slide, Mark, are you able to advance that?
Oh, my bad.
Oh, no worries. We can see a progression upward as far as probabilities go, really kind of jumping to their highest levels, mid to late March, but they do stay elevated really throughout this time period, and possibly seeing another slight maximum in, mid to late April. But the probabilities are fairly elevated throughout this time period. Again, we do typically see at least minor flooding for the Illinois River, at least lower portions of the Illinois River this time of year. We do see some elevated probabilities for moderate flood, but not really of great significance. Again, it's pretty close to normal overall for this location.
And on south to the Big Muddy River at Murfreesboro. Mary, are you on?
I am. Good evening, everyone. So, like most of the points north of my area, you can see that, we're looking at maybe a less likely chance for some flooding at the lower end of the Murfreesboro, but we get more toward normal climatological as we get into the higher, moderate, and major levels. These graphics were created earlier in this week, and if you're from down my way, you've had a lot of rain today, and, well, the Big Muddy's getting ready to go into flood. So we're going to nip that in the bud real quick, get it started early. So if you want to switch to the weekly, what we showed for the full 90 days is kind of that ramping up, like Mark said, but really, as we go through the spring months, we're probably less likely to see some of the moderate and major flooding that we've seen in past years at Murfreesboro. Now, if we switch over to the Mississippi, and just like upstream in Mark's area, we have a less likely chance of seeing some of those higher flood amounts this spring. And if we switch to the weekly, we can see that kind of ramp up through the spring months with, better chances of flooding as we head more into the latter part of March and in through April. At Cairo, remember Cairo's down on the Ohio, and we've had a lot of rain in the Ohio Valley today, so we're going to get this started early. We're pretty close to normal. Our conditional is very close to the historical. So, we know we're going to see flooding at Cairo, and if you look at the statistics through the next 90 days as we go into the spring, we do start ramping up maybe some higher amounts, 25, 50% as we head in through the spring months. Just as a little FYI, all 5 of our climate reporting sites today broke their daily maximum record for rainfall. So, yay us.
All right. Is that it, Mary?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, I can relate. I was in at the office today, and we had a lot going on about every kind of weather.
Still at the office.
Yeah, I kind of wish I was actually. The observed precipitation. Speaking of the office, the reason why we were so busy today is we had as you know, a very complex wintertime precipitation event, starting out as rain and changing to snow from north to south. This is a breakdown of where the heaviest rain fell, basically along and south of the I-44 corridor in Missouri and the I-70 corridor in Illinois. And the heaviest rainfall, at least in our area, was down toward Reynolds County and into Iron and Madison counties, Missouri, and extending into Washington and Clinton counties and Illinois. And some of those areas picked up to 3 to 4 inches of rain. And we had a few places with over 4 inches of rain across parts of southeast Missouri. And it looks like similar amounts were reported across Mary's area into southern Illinois, southeastern Missouri, and northwest Kentucky. So that brings us to what that rainfall did to some of these places. And for one of Darren's more southern points, This is the result on the Little Wabash River. Darren?
Yeah, as both Mark and Mary have been mentioning, we're getting a jump on our near-term flooding. We were kind of on the northern end of the 2 to 3 inch map that Mark showed on the previous slide, but this is one of our more quickly responding rivers on the Little Wabash. Flows into the Wabash, near New Haven and far southeastern Illinois. But again, this is one of our more quickly responding rivers. We've especially in these areas in north, we did have some snowpack that really largely melted out. Some frost earlier in the week, which has obviously eroded away. So we've really been able to efficiently run off a lot of the water that's come with this latest storm system. So again, we are getting a jump on it, and going to be a fairly active pattern as we go into next week with another system, primarily across far southern Illinois in the Ohio River Valley.
And in my neck of the woods, the Merrimack River near Steelville is going up very quickly this evening, and we are expecting a flood crest above flood stage, a minor flood there. And minor flood by Weather Service standards is minor impacts. You might see the possibility of a county road closure, something like that, but it's usually things like parks and recreational fields, that kind of thing, when minor flooding occurs. Downstream from Steelville at Sullivan, the impacts just above flood stage here are actually pretty significant. We do have a campground right on the river, and shortly after it gets above flood stage, that campground is impacted. And so the Merrimack River State Park needs to be having those campgrounds evacuated. And getting up to 17 feet, I can tell you much of that campground does get inundated at that level. On the big river at Burnsville, again, minor flooding, but a fairly high minor flood, getting up to 19.5 feet, just short of where we consider moderate flooding when, a significant number of roads, of important roads, start getting flooded and really disrupting travel. And on the Kaskaskia River at Vandalia, getting awfully close to that moderate flood level at 24 feet. So some pretty good minor flooding expected there as well. And Mary, oh no, this is the Black River, Annapolis. This is still in my area. And this looks like a pretty good flood in progress as well. Currently forecast at 14.5 feet, but it may go higher because I think we did receive more rainfall in this basin than we had modeled initially. Mary, would you like to talk about the St. Francis River?
Yeah, sure. This graphic was obviously done earlier this afternoon. Patterson right now is sitting just under 22 feet and starting to make that curve like it's wanting to start to crest, but we might actually push 23.5 before it's over, and then it's going to fall as soon as it rose. So it's a quicker responding river, so we'll see the water pass south pretty quick.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you, Darren. If there are any questions, I guess this would be the best time for it, or not, Kathy?
Sure. Are there any questions for the National Weather Service folks? *6 on your phone, or you can unmute at the bottom of the page, or both if you've muted both.
Hey, Mark, this is Kevin Scheibe with Monroe County. In reference to the Merrimack River, I would assume forecasting minor on that as well, since that's right across from our county.
I'm sorry, I can barely hear you. The volume isn't very strong.
Sorry about that.
What county again?
We're Monroe. Yeah, this is Kevin with Monroe County.
Monroe County, Missouri.
No, Monroe County, Illinois, right across from the Merrimack River.
Ah, okay, I got you now. So you're worried about which river now? The Mississippi?
We're located on the Mississippi. The western border of our county is the Mississippi, but the Merrimack is right smack dab across from us.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, and Well, December of, I can't remember when it was, 17. That really affected us.
Right.
Are you forecasting probably, sounds like it's across the board minor for Merrimack as well?
Yeah. In fact, downstream of Sullivan, we're not expecting any flooding really. It's going to be near bank full at places like Pacific and Eureka and Valley Park, and I don't even think we're getting above action stage at Fenton and Arnold. So by the time it gets to the Mississippi, of course the low level of the Mississippi is going to mitigate that inflow quite a bit. It really doesn't change the outlook for Chester, or for St. Louis for that matter. We are still expecting a below average risk of flooding at both locations, although that risk at Chester is actually it's a likelihood that they'll see flooding is just below average, a below average risk. So it doesn't change that for Chester at all. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the Weather Service?
Yeah, this is Ellett Rafferty. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, what's the likelihood to be the highest stage you're going to likely see at Cape Girardeau this spring?
That would be for Mary. You got a quick answer there, Mary?
No, not really. It's all going to depend on the heavy rain patterns as we head into the spring. Right now with the pattern we're seeing, we're looking at some of the heaviest rains more south of Cape Girardeau into western Kentucky and maybe far southern Illinois. But the chances are there that it's going to be less than what might be considered a normal year, but that can change with our weather patterns. I mean, we get any of these start shifting more to the north, and we could be looking at heavy rain, over the Cape Girardeau area and more towards central Illinois. But right now we are looking at some of the heavier rains down further south of Cape itself, at least for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, we're not too worried about what happens south of us, but we're concerned about what happens north of us. What about the Kaskaskia Basin? You haven't said anything about that. That's a huge watershed, and that comes in on us and doesn't affect the St. Louis or Chester, either one, does it? Then it comes in south of Chester, Ellisville.
Right. I don't think I mentioned. No, I didn't. I was looking through my slides here. I did not include Vandalia. The flood risk of Vandalia, I think, is a little bit above normal this year. And they're in flood right now, so you can check that box. Vandalia did flood in 2022, and we're going to see a pretty good minor flood out of this event. That might be the only flood we see all spring, or we may see a repeat performance, in a week or two with that above normal risk of precipitation.
Sure.
So I guess what I'm saying there is that the Kaskaskia, at least above Carlisle, is expecting an above normal risk of flooding this year. That doesn't really change things for you on the Mississippi.
Okay.
So that's incorporated into the Mississippi calculations.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Sure. My apologies for the earlier interruption I had here and my reaction to it. It was not pleasant, I'm sure.
It sounded like you ordered takeout.
Yeah, I wish I was. Take me out.
Dash.
Anyway.
Sounds like you have control, just like we do at home.
Yeah, sometimes that's the way it works, I guess. Interruptions when you least expect it.
That's right. We all understand.
All right. We'll have an open discussion period at the end of all the briefings as well. If you have additional questions, think of anything else for the Weather Service. But we'll move on. Joan Stemler, our Chief of Water Control, wasn't able to make it tonight. So I'm going to ask if there are any local, regional, or state emergency managers who would like to say anything. All right, hearing none. Again, if you want to comment, you can put it in the chat as well for questions and comments, or unmute yourself. I guess we'll move on to me now. Again, my name is Kathy Van Arsdale. I'm currently the Acting Chief of Emergency Management. John Osterhage, who actually is on the call, I'll call him out a little bit. The chief is down the hall doing a detail, so I'm temporarily the emergency management chief in the St. Louis district. But I'm going to talk tonight about the Corps of Engineers flood response and recovery. Most of you have probably heard this before, so I'll make it quick. But we all know the flood risk life cycle. We get an event, we have to respond, then we have to recover from our damages. Mitigation is doing things so the next flood isn't quite as serious, and then we prepare and train for the next event. So this meeting is intended as the preparation portion for the next event, hopefully not this year. So next. Our authority to respond and recover, help you recover from flooding is Public Law 8499. PL 8499 is like an insurance policy. The levee districts that are active in the PL 8499 program agree to maintain their levees up to certain standards. And we come out periodically and inspect the levees to document the condition. And if they are, if the levee districts are taking care of their levees, then they're active in the program. What does that do for the levee districts? Well, if you get damaged during a flood event, we will help you recover from that flood event by making repairs. Of course, there are limitations to that, but for the most part, if you're active in the program, we can help you recover from flood damages after a flood event. Next. What does our response entail? We can provide our flood response assistance when the following criteria are met at the local level. Rivers have to be at or above flood stage for us to activate our EOC to respond. Our district commander has to make a declaration of emergency. That triggers funding for us to respond, which is at no cost to you. The district commander can make that declaration outside of any other declaration, local or state or federal declaration. So our commander can independently make a declaration of emergency depending on the situation. The local resources have to be fully employed in flood fight for us to assist. This means that we are not the first line flood fighters, that we are going to work with you to flood fight. We are not going to work for you to flood fight. You have to be engaged in flood fighting your levees in your areas, and the state has to be engaged, and the state has to request our assistance on your behalf for us to engage. This is a very quick process. It can be nearly immediate if there's a situation ensuing that's happening very quickly. But this is what we have to ensure is happening before we can engage. Next. What do we provide as far as our engagement goes? We provide technical and direct assistance in response to floods. Again, it's on request of the state up through your local EMs up to the state, and then they request our involvement. This is the process that has to go for our requests for assistance through your local EM, county EM, regional, state, and then the state requests our assistance. Again, this is a very quick process. If something's going on, everybody is engaged immediately. Next. We provide technical and direct assistance. Our technical assistance consists of providing review and recommendations and our expertise in support of your efforts to address your flooding and any damages that might be occurring on your systems. We help you determine the best way forward. Next. You are all familiar with our flood fight teams who are on the ground with you. Again, we are not the first line of defense in flood fight. That is the locals. However, we are there to assist you. We're shoulder to shoulder with you. Our flood fight teams are out there with you. Our technical assistance is intended to be given to you for your own use. We do not tell you how to attack a problem. We provide information to you so you can make the decisions in the field how you want to address the flooding. We do not also tell you when to evacuate your areas. That's a local response, but we can provide information that will inform that response. But the sheriff's office or other locals would call for an evacuation of your area. We also have, during an event, we also provide liaison officers to Springfield and Jefferson City, depending on where the flooding is occurring. Those people are there to facilitate information upward to the state and to our EOC, as well as provide information down to the field to our flood fight teams and to yourselves in the field. So it makes the process of getting information where it needs to go more efficient, since we have somebody sitting in Springfield and Jefferson City, and it facilitates quick response action. So one of our liaison officers is on tonight, Sean Sullivan. He provides that service during a flood to Illinois, and so he will talk later about some of our initiatives, but he is on the line too if there are any questions about that process. Next. Jen Molman in our office, who is our National Emergency Preparedness Program Manager, will speak about our direct assistance. She's the person you would contact during a flood for equipment and supplies. Jen?
Good evening. Like Kathy said, my name is Jennifer Molman, and during a flood event, I help with some of the direct assistance. That includes issuing supplies such as sandbags, plastic sheeting, and some other supplies that we'll go over, and loaning of equipment. And then direct assistance can also, in some cases, include contingency contracting as well. The supplies and equipment that we have available to loan include cruciform pumps. Keep in mind these pumps are PTO driven. Sandbags, the sandbags are empty. They do not come with sand, and we do not provide sand, so you'll need to have that ready yourself. Polyethylene sheeting. And then we have two sandbag machines. One is manual and one is automated. And then there is the option of other equipment that we might be able to get, to provide for you, to loan to you from our national warehouse in Rock Island. And in the event that you need something other than these things, we can discuss that. A couple of things to keep in mind is that we can only issue out supplies and equipment during an event. That doesn't mean that you have local flooding. That means that we have declared an emergency event at the district office, and then we will be able to provide that out. We do not replenish your supplies, so if you're out of satin bags at the end of the event, then you'll have to go through other routes to replenish that. It's not something that we're able to do. And the supplies and equipment that we issue out, that is for the sponsor use for the levee. It is not for personal or individual use. The supplies and equipment are warehoused in Granite City, Illinois, and must be picked up. We don't have the ability to deliver it, and anything that needs to be returned to us would have to be returned to the same place. Which, going into the returns, after an event is over and returned to bank full, then you have 60 days from the end of that event to return any equipment that has been loaned out, including the pumps and sandbag machines of that sort. And any supplies that we issue, such as the plastic or sandbags, there is a stipulation that that the colonel can require that to be replaced or reimbursed. It's not been an issue in the past that we've ever requested that, but I do want to make you aware that that option is there. Okay, and then we will go back to Kathy to discuss the contingency contracting.
Contingency contracting is a method that we can use here in the St. Louis district to provide emergency rock or other things that you might need to address the flooding. However, our contingency contracting will not work if you need any additional supplies such as rock or other materials or equipment outside of what we already loan if you need it immediately. And contingency contracting only comes into play if all other resources are exhausted or cannot fulfill your request. So you have to go locally first and then regionally and through the state to try and request any materials that would have to be contracted to be brought on site before we can employ contingency contracting. And one very limiting factor that I want you to be aware of, it takes us several days in order to get those to you because of our contracting methods in the district. So it's not an immediate thing we can have requested at noon on Friday and have it out there at 9 on Friday. It's something that takes days for us to do. So it's very important that if that sort of thing is anticipated, that any request for that would have to go up through the chain early when you see a potential issue, because it is not an immediate thing we can fill immediately for you. I just want everyone to be aware of that. We don't use this often because it is a limited factor. Usually the state or local agencies can supply those items that you need that we would have to contract for before we could ever get it to you. So it's not used often for that reason. And another note at the bottom of the page I want to make sure that you're aware of. If our flood fighters out there with you suggest you do something and it costs money to have that done, for instance, if the state or local folks get rock in to address an issue or soil or anything of that sort of, we do not reimburse you for that unless we are employing our contingency contracting. So that is a local or state expense. We do not reimburse for flood fight supplies unless we have to go through contingency contracting, and then we pay for that. So I just wanted to make, that's been an issue in the past, been a point of confusion, so I wanted to make sure that you understood that. Any flood response is intended to be a temporary emergency measure. Our response, our teams being out there with you and assisting you, our EOC assistants, our liaison officer at the state is 100% federally funded, with a possible exception that Jen mentioned of supplies and equipment, which we have, in my memory, have never asked for reimbursement for. The removal or upgrade of all emergency measures is a local responsibility. The Corps will not take your sandbags off the levee or anything of that sort. An important note regarding a deliberate levee breach. Sometimes a district feels that it's important to make a levee cut in order to mitigate for future damages. Please coordinate that with the EOC before you do that. This is so we can know about it and concur that yes, we can argue for repayment of that through the PL 8499 program. If we feel it's not warranted, we would be hard pressed to get that as part of the repair through PL 8499. In addition, any levee breach, intentional or not, affects downstream forecasts. And so our water control would like to know ahead of time before you breach your levee intentionally so that they can adjust the downstream forecast. Very often we learn of breaches through our water control coming over and telling us that that they're seeing a drop in the gauges below a certain point on the river. And so that is sometimes our first indication of a breach. So they would like to know that ahead of time so they can anticipate the gauge readings and what's going on downstream of that breach. Next, please. Next. Sorry, there's a little delay. We're all working from home today, so there's always a little delay. Many of you are familiar with our post-flood process and understand that it is not a quick process, but by law we are required to go through this process. I'm not going to belabor this point, but I do want to make sure that you understand the second point on this flow chart. After a river goes down to bank full during an event, it goes down to bank full and we send out a notification to our sponsors that they need to request assistance from us. It's called RFA, Request for Assistance. Understand that we are limited to 30 days upon notification of that, from that notice being sent out. You have 30 days to submit your request for assistance. Outside of those 30 days, we would be very hard pressed to have a project to be able to help you with your flood repairs. That being said, if you think that you have any damages to your levee from a flood event, we encourage you to submit an RFA, even if you can't get out there because of the conditions or debris on the levee or still high water in the interior. If you think you may have damages, please submit a request for assistance within that 30 days so we can have a project if you indeed do have damages. If we don't receive that within the 30 days, we cannot have a project to repair your levee. So even if you just suspect it, put that in your request for assistance. Put in there that you would suspect wave wash or that you have a breach or whatever you might suspect, erosion. And we can go from there with a project if we receive it, if it's postmarked within 30 days of that request of our notification going out. I can't stress that enough. If we hear from you 40 days after that notice, then we cannot really guarantee that we would have a project to repair your levee. Next, please. What types of damages are eligible? Flood damages, breaches, including the intentional breach that I mentioned, if pre-coordinated with the EOC, so we are aware and understand your reasoning behind it. Slides, wave wash, culvert damage, gate damage, pump station damage, and some under seepage damages. That's on a case-by-case basis depending on what's going on with the under seepage. Next, please. Things that we do not address. We do not remove the debris from your levee from the flood. We, again, don't remove the flood fight materials, and we cannot repair the breach if not pre-coordinated with the EOC. And again, it's just a phone call. If you feel you have to do it, give us a call, and so we're aware of it before you cut that levee. Next, please. Also, please know that even if you're eligible in PL 8499 and you have eligible damages, there are certain limitations as to when we can help you repair those damages. The repairs must exceed $15,000, which is a drop in the bucket these days. The benefit cost ratio must be above 1. The project information report must be approved by our division office in Vicksburg. And funding from headquarters must be available for PL 8499. Generally, if it's not available at the immediate time, supplemental legislation goes through for funding, but it may be delayed. For federal levee systems, the cost of repairs are 100% federal. For non-federal levy systems, they're 80-20, with the bulk still being federal cost. The 20% cost can be cash or work in kind from the levy sponsors, and the cost is estimated using what it would cost the government to make those repairs. So if the levy district can do their work in kind for less money than we're figuring it would take the government, then you're that much farther ahead. Next. That is all I have right now. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none. Next, we will hear from the Levy Safety Program Manager, Amanda Gold.
Thanks, Kathy. This is Amanda Goltz. Good evening, everybody. The Levy Safety Program Manager. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I was double muted earlier.
We can hear you.
Awesome. All right, go ahead and go on to the next one. We're going to go over briefly tonight some policy, current activities, upcoming activities for the next couple years, and then a few frequent topics that come up. Next slide. So the policy updates that I'm going to discuss tonight actually came into play last year. The EC was released April 22nd, 21. So this was seen last year in the flood preparedness meeting if you were on. But the changes are that there are no overall segment and system ratings for the district. And now we call our periodic inspections, formal inspections, and our routine inspections site visits, and that is for our federal levy system. For our non-federal levy systems, your routine inspections have not changed. Can you go ahead to the next one? Yeah. Thank you. So for this year, the planned formal inspections for our federal system are on the screen, 3 of which have actually already been completed. 1 is upcoming this spring and another early summer, weather pending. Let's go ahead to the next. On the next screen, you'll see the federal site visits that are planned for this year. Again, the site visits are supposed to be more relaxed than the routine inspections. The idea is to give the sponsor more flexibility to when they would like us to come out and look at issues or look at improvements that they're having and to document those more quickly and then include those in the next formal inspection, which will still take place on a minimum of a 5-year basis. Now the chart on the screen is our planned non-federal routine inspections for this year. 6 of those have already been complete. You can go ahead. And the chart on the next screen, when it catches up, these are the risk assessments that are planned for this year. It is also showing the Cape Girardeau risk assessment that was just completed a couple months ago in December. Go ahead. You can actually move 1 more forward, please, Jen. So our risk communication is coordination with our stakeholders and development of unique projects specific to areas of interest to communicate the risks and the benefits of each of our projects with the public. A few of the things that we've been working on and that you see on the screen now are some efforts we have with some of our sponsors. Big 5 in Grand Tower, Dagonia, we had some stickers made, and we're working on getting those passed out and working with partners and the public in the school system. City of St. Louis and Wood River, we're also working on outreach. And at the bottom of the screen, you can see that we're working with the Levee Safety Center as a pilot program to storytell on the idea of Love Your Levee, which again, it's just designed to communicate the risks and benefits to the levees, to the community and those that work and live around them. I will now pass it off to one of our levee safety engineers to discuss an upcoming opportunity for our sponsors.
Hey all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, guys, my name is Ashley Johansson, and I just wanted to take a quick moment of your time to discuss what I think is a really great opportunity for the levee systems out there. So recently, us at St. Louis District have done some reflecting, and we've recognized that in the past, we haven't highlighted the great work you as sponsors have done nearly as much as we'd like to. So we have a lot of publications out there talking about flood risk management projects and design efforts and construction efforts, but we rarely speak specifically on the day-to-day activities and the exceptional work that you all have done. So with that being said, we've decided to roll out a new initiative called the Levy Sponsor Spotlight, which will be in the form of a newsletter. And this newsletter will have articles discussing system success stories, historical knowledge and advice from other commissioners, innovative and honestly really impressive efforts that the districts have made to improve their levies, and may even highlight a few extraordinary individuals in your communities and their stories throughout their careers. So basically what this newsletter is doing is really highlighting specifically what you all do rather than us at the district level. So the first edition of the newsletter will be issued later this spring and will be sent out to all of our levy contact distribution list. But we also encourage anyone who does not work within a levy district but is still interested in receiving a copy to please contact me, and I'll add you to the mailing list. You can go ahead and do that in the chat now, as well as if you'd like to, if you're on the Webex version of this meet. But if not, my contact information is listed on the slide. I'd also like to mention that we're always really excited to hear your success stories. So we may reach out to you individually to share your experience with us if we're already tracking a really great project that you've done, or if your district has any projects that they would like to be included in the newsletter, or if you just want to shout out someone in your community that's done a really great job and really deserves to be recognized for their outstanding service, you can feel free to reach out to me as well. Anyways, I'm really looking forward to publishing that new edition, and I'm really excited to share with you all like some of the great things that's been going on in the St. Louis district across the border. So yeah, hoping to send that out later this spring. Thanks, everybody.
Ashley,
Ashley.
would you like to provide your contact information to those that are just on the phone and can't see it on WebEx?
Yes, of course. Yeah, so you can call me at 314-331-8106. And then my email is a little long, but I'll spell it out for you guys that are interested. It is ASHLEIGH period M period JOHANSON at usace.army.mil. And then it looks like I got a question in the chat saying, how often will this be issued? It looks like it's going to be issued quarterly, so we're hoping, biannually, so we're hoping to submit one in the spring and then one in the fall. That's tentative as of right now, but biannually is the idea.
Thank you, Ashley. We'll jump back in now with a quick look ahead for the next couple of years. Again, more charts for you guys to look at. So for our upcoming formal inspections and site visits and assessments for the federal, we have 5 formal inspections planned for 23, 12 site visits planned for 23, and 2 assessments. And in 24, we have 2 formal inspections, 9 site visits, and 4 assessments. And on the next slide, for our non-federal levies, in 23, we have 9 planned routine inspections, and in 24, we have 14 planned routine inspections. You can go on. One thing I wanted to touch on very quickly tonight is also discussed last spring, but it's a frequent topic that comes up, and it's also under seepage as a risk driver for a lot of our levee systems. So you can see on the screen here now that to be acceptable, the relief wells need to be pump tested within the last 5 years, and your operation and maintenance manual for each system should document how many of those and how frequently you need to do that if it differs from that. You can go ahead to the next one. This slide just shows some applicable guidance. Again, you can contact me later for this information. Go ahead, Jen. A lot of relief wells in our district and within our systems that require maintenance. You can see that on this screen. You can go ahead to the next one. So St. Louis District now will start assigning the unacceptable ratings if the relief well maintenance and pump tests have not been performed, but we will be working with sponsors on documenting these things and working with you and planning SWIFT if required. You can go ahead to the next one. The next two slides that we're going to cover are for the National Levee Safety Program. This is a joint effort that's being led by FEMA and USAID. This is different than the current levee safety program. We're currently in the phase 1 shown at the bottom of the screen. They are trying to get feedback and input from you, the sponsors, the stakeholders, those that are interested in the levee system. There are still 2 upcoming meetings on February 22nd and the 24th. And if you go to the next slide, the website where you can go and register for that is at the bottom, leveesafety.org. And again, this program is different than the levee safety program, and it will not conflict with the current levee safety program and the practices that USAID do. The next slide is the references slide. And then the following slide, last but not least, just for everyone's awareness, more changes. For the latter part of the year from June through November, Jeremy F. will be the acting levee safety program manager. And the very last slide, my contact information. Thank you guys, and I'll leave it open for questions for a moment. And if I need to provide my email address and phone number, I can also do so, if anybody would like me to provide that.
All right, hearing no questions, again, we'll have an opportunity at the end of everyone's presentation for questions as well. We'll next go to Mr. Jeff Wells. He just started this week as our new ICW 408 program manager. So he's going to talk to you about those programs. Jeff?
All right, can everybody hear me here?
You're good.
All right, good deal. My VPN just timed out, so I was hoping no issues with connectivity here. So Jeff Wells, ICW Program Manager, 408 Coordinator. So just took over this week, so kind of learning the process, but got a lot of good people to help me out, and you know, just continue running the program. So alterations. So this kind of some of the things that we focus on in the 408 process is any changes that are being made to your levee systems, whether it be from you know, the non-federal sponsor or you know, other individuals out there or other entities that, you know, if they want to put a pipeline or something like that across the levee, you need to bring that to us for review and approval. So we'll do basically maybe depending on the, go back one slide very quick. So depending on, all right, there we go. So depending on the proximity to the levee, we could either do a Section 408 review, which is anything that's, you know, essentially within 15 foot of the levee itself, or the levee embankment, or below grade or above grade. We'll do a full 408 review, and anything basically outside into the 500 foot range, we can do a levee safety or compliance review, basically for those types of projects where, you know, you might have a concern as a sponsor where, you know, somebody's doing an excavation in those areas. We can take a look at it and make sure there's no issues from the levee safety side. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So what I was talking about there was kind of, we give the authority and grant the permission to alter the you know, this federal projects. So those projects that the federal government constructed, we give the authority to do the modifications. So what we're going to look at during these reviews is basically some, you know, knowing that there's not going to be any harm to the levee itself, and it's not going to affect the usefulness of the levee system to, you know, to protect against, you know, floods. And it's also going to be non-interest to the public interest, meaning, you know, if you do a project that damages the levee, then it's obviously not into, of the public interest to the individuals living behind or the landowners. So also the non-federal sponsors, you guys can also request reviews from us, and we'll do a safety review basically of any modifications to your levee systems, and we can give you that guidance and help you through the process. So one of the key things that we encourage is getting us involved in the planning processes as quick as you guys can. So if you got something that's coming up, somebody wants to do a project in the vicinity of the levee, get us involved as quick as you can, and we can start the process as early as possible. So next slide. So PLE 499 eligibility, like Amanda covered, the policy has changed. So what I got here in the slides is referring to the routine and periodic inspections. That's updated to the formal and the site visits. So what we're looking about to maintain eligibility in the program is the 18 interest eligibility items. Those are your big ones like your culverts, your embankments, and those types of features that affect the performance during flood events. And then any levee systems are out there with non-federal sponsors. You can request initial eligibility inspection, and we'll formally inspect the levee and potentially let you guys into the PLE 499 program to where you can get a cost share if there is damage to your levee systems during or after a flood event. So next slide. And then the system-wide improvement framework program. So that's a program basically to where if you get a few consecutive unacceptable ratings on your levee system, you could enter into a SWIFT where you guys would sign a letter of intent that's designed to last 2 years. You'll just say, express your intent to, do, specific repairs to levees to get basically your levee back into compliance and to where you eventually get back to that, acceptable rating. And with the SWIFT plan, it's generally 2 years of eligibility, but we could do a 1-year extension if circumstances are approved for that. So next slide. So some of the things we notice and some of the things that affect the performance of levees is unauthorized modifications to relief wells. So you can see that picture on the left. There's a modification of the relief well with the standpipe, and then there's a sand boil right next to the relief well itself. So just don't modify your relief wells. They're designed to function in a specific manner. So don't make any changes. And go ahead, next slide. And then culverts. So some of the things, just make sure you're doing your inspections on the time schedule that basically we're providing to you guys. So get your good camera inspections and get the the required paperwork completed, and it'll help through the process and help assess whether there's any concerns with your culverts or how they're going to function during the flood. So next slide. Like the major points we like to cover is participate in your inspection. So when we come out there and call you guys, and then we come out and do an inspection on your levees, we'd like to have you guys along with us. It's always beneficial to have the eyes on the ground that are there. You guys know these levee systems better than we do, so you can provide that feedback about what's out there or any issues or concerns that you guys may have, and we can provide that guidance, and it just helps with the inspection process. So the maintenance logs, you guys get those, and I'm sure you sponsors are very familiar with the maintenance logs. Just provide those on a semi-annual basis, like we ask. So preparing for potential flooding. So what we like to ask you guys to do is drive the system and make sure there's no you know, existing erosion, slides, or, you know, significant ammo burrows that basically could affect the performance of the levee during the levee system. And then take a good look at your pipes, you know, before the river rises. Take a look at your flap gates, make sure there's no debris or anything like that that's holding the flap gate open to where you're gonna have water backflowing through the flap gate into the pipe and then into your levee system. It can just cause some issues. So updated contacts too, just if you guys have any turnover in your levee district personnel, make sure you get that info to us and we'll get it updated so we have the appropriate contact information to talk with you guys. And then the guidance and the contact information there, that's just basically our emergency ops website. So, you know, take a look at that. There's, you know, information on there that can be helpful for you guys as well. So, and then don't hesitate to reach out to us. Just keep us involved in the planning process for any 408s and you know, push us, you know, with any questions that you guys have, and we'll be more than happy to provide the assistance as requested. Next slide. All right, so my contact information is listed there. So, you know, just email me or call me if you guys need anything. And working through some 408s now, we're getting things caught up. So we'll be in touch if you guys have any questions on those. So.
We'll also be at the end of everything when we're having our open discussion. We'll post the emergency management and water control contacts at the end, as well as our website. Are there any questions for Jeff before we go to the next? All right, hearing none. Next, we're going to hear from Liz Norrenburns. Again, she's going to talk about the updates to the PL 8499 repairs from the 2019 flood, among a few other things. So, Liz?
All right, thanks, Kathy. Good evening, everyone. Like Kathy said, I'm Liz Norrenburns, and I'm filling in right now for Shane. He's the one that you normally talk to. While he's out, him and his wife just had a baby, so while he's out, I am helping him out with PL 8499. All right. So one of the things I want to go over with you all is, I think we've all seen this slide, the repair process for PL 8499. You know, there's multiple steps here. The request for assistance, damage survey, quantities and costs, economic analysis, the PIR, design phase, and big one there is the borrow. So, and I'll talk about that a little bit here. And then the real estate. And then finally down to the contract award. So, like I said, with borrow, there's usually issues that pop up with that. So things that we need, right of entry, so that we can go and investigate. And it's to make sure that the material is appropriate for what we're needing, basically to repair the levees. So, then with real estate, making sure that we have right of way there. You know, levee district, they must acquire the lands, the easements, right of way for all of that. Getting landowners and attorneys involved as soon as possible. So these are just a few of the things that really help out with the process. Next slide. So as far as status goes with 2019 floods, most of them have been completed. There's a couple still sitting out there yet. And I will discuss those here. I've got a list of them. But you can see most of everything has been completed as of now. Next slide. So around Wood River, that one is still going on. We have made an award, you know, as far as working through to make some adjustments there. MESD, same thing. There was complex designs, working through that one as well. KTR has mobilized there. MSD, also another unique design or repair, and it has required a little extra time there as well. So working through that and planning on mobilizing there in February, as well as some of the others. Darst is another one. Notice to proceed has been issued. So, in that one, we're looking to move forward in this month, later this month. Augusta solicitation is ongoing. The bids have been received and it's pending award yet, but that one should be moving out here pretty soon. Shoto, with that one, we're currently working with Illinois American, talking with them. They have their design for their grit tank. They're planning right now to potentially look at doing their construction work for their discharge pipe, where that will be underneath the levee this summer. So working with them, and then we'll be pursuing to finalize things after that. And then Pike Green, we're reviewing the PIR comments now. So, like I mentioned, a few things to help speed up the process with this. Identifying the borrow areas. Knowing that, being able to move forward on that really does help with accelerating as far as getting out there. Like I said, involving landowners and attorneys early. Returning your cooperation agreement right away. Notifying project manager of potential problems with easements and things. All of this helps to push the process along. So to get things expedited as far as moving through the system and getting to where we're, moving dirt. So, anyhow. All right, next slide. And I've got there, thank everyone, for giving me your time here tonight. Shane's contact information is there, as well as mine. So if anytime you can always reach out to me. So anyhow, thank you. If there are any questions.
Are there any questions for Liz? All right. Lastly, before we go into the open discussion time period, I wanted to do something a little different this year and have two of our colleagues, Sean Sullivan and Eddie Brower, talk about some of our initiatives that are going on that might be of interest to some of the folks on the phone. The Upper Mississippi River initiatives, and then Eddie's going to talk about engineering with nature. So I'm going to go to Sean right now, who's going to talk about the Upper Mississippi River.
Hey, thanks, Kathy, and just a quick comm check.
Loud and clear.
All righty, thank you. Hey, so good evening, and I just want to see if you can recall for a moment the graphic that Kathy had showed early on in the briefing this evening, roughly, I guess, an hour and a half ago. She had a graphic that had identified a concentric circle with a series of arrows: preparedness, response, recovery. This portion of the brief will be about the mitigation portion, so what was in the bottom left-hand side of that particular graphic that she had showed. Next slide, please. So what I would say is, across many forums, there really appears to be agreement among agencies, partners, academic institutions, stakeholders, that the frequency and the magnitude of floods on the Upper Mississippi and Illinois rivers are increasing. And one data point that we're kind of using internal within the Corps and that we're tracking is that the Upper Mississippi River has experienced the majority of its top 10 flood crests in the last 20 years. And really, if you want to put a scale onto that, what geographic area or reach of the Mississippi River am I talking about? It's really from the Quad Cities and the Iowa-Illinois area south to the Ohio River. And then the lower Mississippi River from the Ohio down south has its share of flood frequency and duration problems itself. So our partners, and I guess what the bottom line is that our partners and stakeholders desire a proactive approach to flood risk management strategies, really as opposed to reacting to the flood event. So one way that we can help, that we can better understand these changes and help you better understand these changes in flood frequency is through the development of tools. And so what I would point your attention to is in the top right-hand corner of this quad slide here entitled Hydraulic Models. So that's the first tool that I'll cover. So in 2018, we had, the Corps had initiated development of this flood risk management hydraulic model. We have tackled it really in the four-phased approach because it's covering almost 1,000 miles of the Mississippi River, and then extends up onto the right. The leg that extends up towards the Lake Michigan is obviously the Illinois River. And each one of those little call-out boxes there represent a segment of the river that we had developed this hydraulic model on. So the goal of the model is to provide a common tool, a seamless tool, using that best available data and software that can reasonably recreate a range of events that have occurred or may occur in the future so that we can assess that flood risk management strategies as we move forward. It uses HEC-RAS software. HEC-RAS, it's identified there on the screen, but river area analysis, or river analysis system. It's widely used by hydraulic engineers within federal and state agencies, academic institutions, engineering firms for flood risk management analysis, planning, and decision making. That model, the importance of it is that it represents the entire floodplain, bluff to bluff, not just levee system to levee system. And really the final phase, I guess the take-home message with this piece is the final phase of the model is scheduled for completion this month. So we've tackled all four phases. We're in the process of wrapping up that last phase now. And the so what of how can it help you is it can inform, emergency action planning. It can help make in flood fighting decisions. It can help with future mitigation strategies on the upper Mississippi and Illinois waterways. So that's really the so what to this, and helps us to further understand change as it's occurring within the upper Miss. I want you to then draw your attention down to the bottom left-hand quadrant. I'll give you a quick update on what's called the full frequency study. So this is an effort that received some initial seed money in fiscal year 21, where we initiated some scoping and are carrying forward this current fiscal year to gather data and perform gap analysis. Really the update to this full frequency study, the last time it had been updated was in 2004. We've had a series of flood events that have occurred since 2004. So the update will help us to answer the question of what effect of recurring floods have on previously calculated flood frequencies. So I guess another way to say this is that is a particular river gauge reading truly reflective of a 100-year event, or is it at some other frequency? And that's really the answer that this will help us to solve, and is important for planning and decision-making and engineering decision-making and economic benefit calculations and those type things. So the other piece to this is that I would also say that an update also improves our confidence and reliability of the flow frequencies so that we can plan and adapt to change. And ultimately, in summary, an updated flow frequency study supports sound flood risk management planning and communication decision-making. And I think the good news to this piece is that we have funds in hand to continue forward. There was some initial indications that our seamless funding stream might be a little bleak, but it looks like there may be a window of opportunity to keep the lights on and keep us going with this particular study. And the estimated time frame to complete the update with this flow frequency study is a 4-year window of time. And then lastly, I want to shift kind of quickly out of the tool development and move to the bottom right-hand quadrant on the section of the slide that's labeled Southwest Illinois Levee Systems. Now, this is really an initiative piece, not so much a tool. I can see in the queue, I recognize several names in here that are familiar and involve levee districts that are located within this reach of the Mississippi River. The Southwest Illinois Levee Systems is a series of federal levees that are obviously locally operated and maintained. We're tracking that during the 2019 flood and previous floods that these levee systems require some substantial monitoring, technical assistance by the Corps, local government, levee districts, state, for response purposes, mobilization of extensive resources, sandbags and plastics, rock, aqua dams, to address poor levee system performance. The other piece to this is our screening level risk assessments that have been completed for about this 157-mile reach of the Mississippi River has identified under seepage and internal erosion, slope stability, and overtopping with breach as being those three risk driving failure modes that are common to this system of levees here in Southwest Illinois. The other piece that I would say is that changed river conditions, such as that more frequent, longer duration flooding that we talked about a little bit earlier, obviously increases the load and the amount of time that load is placed upon or exerted upon the levee is increasing the impacts of these risk drivers that are identified here on the slide. So what are we doing? You know, in the aftermath of the 2019 event, obviously there comes attention. One of the pieces is how do we move forward? So with that, we've been able to develop an initial appraisal report, document the problems, document the changes in hydrology, get that report submitted to our Mississippi Valley Division, received approval. We now have approval to move forward with seeking a new start feasibility study. And what would a feasibility study do for you? It would enable the Corps in partnership with the state, in cooperation with the levee districts, to comprehensively evaluate system-wide risks, recommend risk reduction actions, and prioritize those actions for future implementation. Now, what I do want to say is Jeff Wills, who spoke just a few minutes ago, had a slide under his 408 section and made reference to the due diligence, the responsibility of the levee districts to continue to maintain, and that is a prerequisite. The levee districts, I know you maintain them, but continue to maintain because as many of you know, it takes time to be able to seek that new start appropriation and decision and move out. And I will tell you that a feasibility study has about a 3-year time frame from start to finish. So with that, there's a responsibility to continue forward on that maintenance, as I know you will. Let's move to the next slide. Still there with me, Kathy? Okay, there we go. Thank you. All right, so this one's just a quick update. There's not a lot of action that we can take. This is for your visibility situational awareness. So in December of 2020, Congress authorized the Water Resources Development Act. They do this on about a 2-year cycle. This is that major authorizing piece of legislation that enables the Corps to do things. Section 133 has the rehabilitation of Corps of Engineers constructed pump stations. And so what this does is provides an opportunity for the Corps to assist local levee districts where a pump station has been constructed in whole or in part by the Corps to address a major deficiency or support in that major deficiency may be like a long-term degradation of foundation, maybe a problem with construction materials, engineering systems or components. It also helps us to look at the associated efficiencies of that pump station, if it meets the eligibility criteria, the associated drainage and the capacity of that pump station. So it allows us to do a couple things. Now, just because Congress says we're allowing you, there's another piece to this puzzle. is it does require implementation guidance. And that implementation guidance is important because it's how is the agency going to carry forward on this particular provision of law. And with that, in coordination or in accordance with applicable policies and procedures within the Corps. And so the jury is still out on this one, and I continue to monitor the implementation guidance rollout weekly. At this point in time, we still don't have it, so there has not been a dollar appropriated for construction. The other piece is that there's just on this slide alone, there's 28 pump stations. This is right here in the St. Louis metropolitan area. 28 pump stations on this slide alone. The total federal funding limit for this is $60 million. One of those pump stations alone that we had evaluated was a $10 million rehab alone. So you can obviously see that the needs exceed what has been authorized. So that is a take-home message as well, that this isn't the end-all, be-all legislation to help solve your pump station problems, but I do want to identify it as an opportunity that's out there that we're continuing to track. Next slide, please. All right, lastly, again, this is really under the I'll call it the quote-unquote mitigation section. This is really how can we help you with planning, engineering, and interagency type assistance. We also call it our silver jackets, where it's many agencies, one team, moving forward to solve flood risk management problems. The key piece to this is how can we help you understand and mitigate the flood risk. We've got 3 programs that can assist the state and local governments, including quasi-units of government, that being levee districts on aspects of flood risk management and flood water management. And one of the keys with this, you see the 3 authorities there, the 50%, 100%, those identify what is the cost share. So some of them have cost share, some of them don't. The so what to this is that kind of the studies under these authorities will inform one of 2 outcomes. Number one, the Corps has the potential to provide some follow-on assistance using one of its implementation authorities to work towards implementation of a solution to an identified problem. Now, I would say that if we get to that point, it's going to be a multi-year effort. I'm just planting that seed. The other piece is that these authorities here can also help us when we prepare that final report. We hand it off to the report recipient. It can enable them to do for themselves within their means or by leveraging funds from other sources. So there is, I've seen a number of situations where a recipient of that report will ultimately leverage funds from FEMA through one of their grants or HUD or through an EDA grant, and then continue forward with addressing that problem and then the associated solution or recommendations that have been put forward. A couple of examples that I thought might be relative to the audience here. The bottom right, left-hand corner with the planning assistance to the states, the Knotwood levee raise, series of levee is breached 93 and 2019, flooded roads for months, cut off access to the county that's located on the left-hand side of the river there. Calhoun County creates major traffic disruptions for trying to get out of the county and obtain basic needs. And so the state of Illinois, in coordination with the Knotwood Levee District, we developed, or we're in the process of developing a plan looking at some levee raise alternatives for this particular area to help inform an IDOT feasibility study on how they might move forward with a proposed bridge project that they have that goes from this levee district and the associated levee area over into Calhoun County, Illinois. So that's just one example. Jury's still out on the recommendation to be put forward as that project or that study is under review right now internally. The other middle one there was Meridosha, Illinois. It's up on the Illinois River. We looked at some seepage analysis. This area is surrounded by 3 different levee districts and also has its own town levee that has its fair share of of level of protection problems in conjunction with some seepage problems. And so we looked at the levee segment, that private levee segment. We also looked for the community. We also looked at the associated seepage and rainfall, started to evaluate that through our HMS modeling. And then we were able to come up with recommendations to protect critical infrastructure that is within that flood-prone area, and then also helps with flood fighting recommendations there as well. And then the last one on the far right with the Louisiana, Missouri, again, that was a Silver Jackets project. Multiple agencies came to the table. We really looked at the flood frequency in the community, the flood depth, velocity, associated damages, and came up with risk reduction recommendations on how the community can adapt and adapt the community to the flood regime, but also specific structures to reduce that future flood risk to critical infrastructure and to include homes and businesses within the community. So with that, that is just an example of some other authorities that we have that are available to us. And with that, Kathy, we can transition to the last slide. That concludes what I was going to brief this evening. And if you'd like, we can transition right to Eddie.
Yes, why don't we go to Eddie, and then we can discuss, have questions at the end of Eddie's Engineering with Nature talk. Eddie? We can't hear you, Eddie. I think you're double muted.
I haven't seen his phone come off mute on the computer yet, Kathy. I know he's on. I just chatted with him a few minutes ago via Teams.
Hey, Eddie, we can't hear you.
All right, I apologize for that. My Webex was locked up here. Can you hear me now?
Great. Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, perfect. So my name is Eddie Brower. I'm a hydraulic engineer here with the St. Louis District. I'm also the interim practice lead for the Engineering with Nature program. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to present on this initiative. So we can go on to this slide here. So the EWN program, really what we do is we're promoting projects that combine multiple benefits. As you see here in this slide, we're looking for triple win goals achieved through collaboration. So if you want to go on to the next slide. I won't read through this whole thing, but I do want to highlight some of the points here on, Engineering with Nature initiative is really informed by focused R&D that's demonstrated with field projects and advanced through partnering. And one of the ways that we do that, one of the big features that we have is we're established through proving grounds. And you can see here, there's a number of different proving grounds, and St. Louis is one of those. And these are places where we produce and encourage projects and are willing to do projects that include Engineering with Nature initiative type themes and type projects. So if you go on to the next slide there. So what am I talking about when I'm talking about, Engineering with Nature principal projects? Well, that'd be projects that use science and engineering to produce operational efficiencies that support sustainable delivery of project benefits. It's also projects that are promoting natural processes to maximum benefit and reducing demands on limited resources and minimizing the environmental footprint. We're looking at broadening and extending the base of benefits provided by projects to include substantiated economic, social, and environmental benefits. And the big thing, too, is the use of science-based collaboration to organize and focus interest, stakeholders, and partners to reduce social friction, resistance, and project delays, and producing more broadly accessible projects. So one thing I think that's really important here is to talk about what we're not. This is not a construction program. We don't have funds to go out and build large-scale projects. This is EWN is a research and development initiative that provides resources to enable more sustainable delivery of those economic, social, environmental benefits associated with infrastructure. We're also not a regulatory program. So Engineering with Nature, we're not coming up with new red tape or new hoops that people have to go through. You know, we're really just encouraging and promoting science-based collaboration and research to help inform USACE decision makers and practitioners. You want to move on to the next slide. So, you know, through that, we're doing targeted research and development to further the key elements of the Engineering with Nature initiative. We inform USACE business line managers on research priorities. EWN has a network for Engineering with Nature, which is an active community of interdisciplinary research practitioners and educators that can be tapped into to help us out with, to help people, even at the district level, you know, help answer questions, do research, help quantify benefits for projects, and, you know, understand ways in which we can incorporate multiple benefits. Another big thing is we develop tools to help practitioners design, evaluate, and implement projects that include EWN principles. And that's something we're doing for both within USACE and for NGOs. You know, I had a conversation just the other day talking about how important it is for us to be able to incorporate some you know, nature-based features in some of our RAS models, like Sean had talked about before, and different tools that we can help kind of show the permitting agencies what are the impacts going to be of different alternatives, different projects that maybe haven't been tried before. Communication is a theme that you've seen the last few slides, and that's something we promote pretty heavily, and we produced a number of documents on nature-based solutions and technical guidance to help practitioners, folks at the district, again, to get these projects in the ground, to help find example projects to kind of help build off of and you know, win-win solutions. We've got produced the international guidelines on natural and nature-based features for flood risk management. Those are you know, some guidelines we worked with people all over the globe on, you know, ways that things that need to be taken into consideration. How do we get these projects in the ground? What kind of considerations do you need to have? What types of projects out there? This covers both the inland and coastal aspects. And then there's the EWN Atlas series, and we have 2 of those. We're working on a 3rd right now, and those are atlases that exhibit projects that incorporate EWN features. As you see, actually, the one on the bottom left there, that's here in the St. Louis district up in Pool 25. So if you want to go on to the next slide. So, you know, as I mentioned, EWN is a research and development program, but starting in 2021, there's been a big push to finding ways that we can implement these projects and get these projects out there, get the resources out to people. So we've got a series of diverse practice leads, as you can see in the photos below there. And then we also have the EWN Cadre, which is a communication tool to tap expertise throughout USACE. You want to move on to the next slide here. So, you know, the big question as I talk about this, you're probably having in your head is, you know, how can Engineering with Nature help? What is he talking about? How can you help me? And, you know, what kind of things can we do at the local level? And some of the things that we can do is we can bring research, planning, partnership, and expertise to the table to help move projects that utilize EWN principles forward. That includes, you know, studies to evaluate benefits of natural and nature-based features, providing resources to help quantify benefits amongst potential project ideas, and that would be, you know, your social, economic, flood risk, environmental, all those things we could tap into, say, you know, experts from around the country at some of our research facilities like ERDIC, or into the network for Engineering with Nature. We can provide assistance, and we have provided assistance for collaboration between other federal, state, and NGOs to get a project moving. You know, that's really the big thing. You could have a really great idea, but if we can't get those partnerships and start to get the ball rolling and all those pieces in place, you know, we could have a huge flood or a catastrophe. If those aren't in place, you know, we really can't move forward on getting those projects going, then we might miss some really good opportunities. And then, as I mentioned, you know, EWN can provide use-based districts with the resources and tools to fully consider these projects through the NOON or the implementation lead, the cadre, and we can also bring, you know, the district level research needs back to the national EWN folks and make sure that the program is going in the right direction. You know, so having that connection with the projects, with the people is very important. So if you want to go on to the next slide. So EWN projects cover a pretty broad focus, and I'm going to talk a lot about, you know, levees because of, you know, obviously that's the interest here, but there's also interest in other things like beneficial use and nature-based features and partnerships and navigation. But so here's some slides. These are not specific projects from EWN, but these are examples of types of projects that are of interest. So, you know, here, as people have probably mentioned before, you know, the Upper Mississippi has 2,200 miles of levees. You know, and what types of things can we do to get away from the kind of the theme that's come up in other presentations, right? Get away from that damage, repair, damage cycle that we're in through the use of, you know, managed overtopping features or, you know, flood storage areas or levee setbacks. You want to go on to the next slide. Yeah, here's an example from the UMRR program. So a levee setback that helped reconnect 700 acres of floodplain, as well as, you know, helping lower, you know, flood risk and some other environmental, social, and, you know, and flood risk benefits. You go to the next one, and this is an example from the Missouri River, and this is a highway, our L575 levee setback. And what's interesting about this one is not only did they reconnect the river to the floodplain, but there was also an emphasis on the borrow pits and creating wetland habitat, which they found a number of different benefits for that, and you know, innovative ways that they can use and source borrow material was another benefit of this project. And you know, the thing with Engineering Nature, the communication aspect of it is how can we take projects like this that are at the local level, make sure we're documenting them, quantifying the benefits, and using them as a foundation for projects around USACs, right? It's a lot easier to get something off the ground if you can point to something similar that's happened, that's been successful. If you want to go on to the next slide, and this is my contact information, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And one thing I forgot to do was list the website address. So I'll put that in the chat, and I'll be around for any questions. Thank you.
I know there was a lot of information there, but are there any questions specific to what Sean and Eddie talked about?
This is Ellett Rafferty. I have a comment to make. Or something. Is that okay? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right. I'd like to, you know, you're talking about this program, this environmental program. You know, I noticed that they avoided mentioning the Alexander County situation. You know, the farmers there feed a lot of wildlife, more than the environmental people. And as a result, they didn't repair. The Lynn Small overtopped and breached in 16. They didn't go in there and repair that, and then denied the farmers the opportunity to put their land back in production, which again feeds the wildlife again. And we feed more, the farmers and the ranchers in this country feed more wildlife than all the environmental groups. And it really bugs us to see. And the thing they've done in Alexander County is a Band-Aid on that situation. They didn't fix it. We can't do the infrastructure. We can't roads can't be maintained to farm the rest of the property there, and it can destroy the tax base. And it's a joke. It's a terrible thing, and it should have been put back. And I'm sure the situation, the MRTs on the other side of the river had something to do with it. And if they would quit pumping this material down the river and start pumping down on the bank, and putting it up against the levees. After all, this eroded material is coming in the river every day, and instead of just pumping it downstream, they need to be pumping it up on the banks and preparing the levees and making them taller so we have protection. This is not 1928. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sean, do you want to address any of the comments?
Yeah, hey, Ella, this is Sean Sullivan. I came down and met with I guess there at the end of January. So it was John Osterhage and Mike Rogers and myself.
I think I was at the program when you were there.
Yes, sir. Are you still down in Florida right now?
Yes, I am.
Oh, lucky you. Well, so what I would say is, sir, we hear you loud and clear. I would say that, the comment that you've made, I'm looking at the queue of participants. So, you've got leadership at the highest levels within the Corps of Engineers St. Louis District that are on, and I think at this point in time we're tracking the situation down in Alexander County. I will tell you, sir, that I did follow up with Katie Main from Congressman Ball's office this past Monday.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple due outs that we had that we owed her information, and I have since provided that information to her. So my understanding is from the output from that associated meeting that we had back on January the 25th is that she'll be engaging with you. So I think the last part of that is, we hear your comment, leadership's on. I don't know that we have a response to you, but we have prepared a response to Katie Main, and we're hoping that she's going to be setting the meeting up soon with the Levee District so that we can continue to discuss. Over.
Well, I thank you, and I didn't mean to tie a can on anybody's tail, but I know this had to come from the highest level when they made the decision there, and it really hadn't helped our community at all, in the sense that of the future, what it's going to do for the community.
Understand.
Are there any other questions or comments specifically for Sean or Eddie? Any comments or questions in general for any of the presenters or anybody on the line who wants to discuss something? I do want to give Lieutenant Colonel Sears was able to get on the phone now. He joined us, and I'd like to give him the microphone if he wants to make any comments. He's our Deputy Commander for the St. Louis District. Sir, would you like to make some comments?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Kathy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, hey, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm in Southern Illinois. We're still going through some weather right now, so my connectivity has been spotty. But I truly appreciate everybody coming online to conduct this flood preparedness meeting. And it's an extremely important as flood season is coming around the corner. And although we may see some favorable signs that we may have hopefully a low flood season, anything can happen. And right now it's time to make sure that we know each other and we make a friend before we need a friend, and be prepared for the worst and certainly hope for the best. But again, I really appreciate the partners, the stakeholders, the neighbors, all the presenters tonight for taking time out and conducting this flood preparedness meeting. And again, I appreciate it, and we look forward to hopefully working with you, not through an emergency, but working through the planning process to ensure that we're prepared if one happens. Kathy, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I do want to draw your attention on screen, if you are on the Webex, that this is the contact information for emergency management and Water control, as you can see, there's some new names and faces in our office. And actually throughout our district, many people are in different positions. But if you need to contact anybody who was talking tonight or you need additional information, you can contact us in the EOC and we'll put you in touch with who you need to talk to or get you the information that you're requesting. Again, our website is at the bottom as well. If there's any additional comments or questions, I'm going to open it up one more time. And I very much appreciate everybody joining us tonight. And we are going to post everything, including recordings of our 2 flood preparedness workshops on our website. It will be next week before that's done. And hopefully next year we will be sitting face-to-face doing this meeting, because I think it's much more collaborative in order to sit face-to-face. But does anybody have any last thoughts or comments before we let you go for the evening?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody from the Corps of Engineers for giving us the opportunity to get the good word out about the flood forecast outlook. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in person next year for sure.
This is Ella Rafferty again. I'd like to thank you for having the opportunity to sit in on this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, sir. All right. Well, I thank you all again. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. We'd be happy to help with anything we can. So everyone, take care and be safe in this weather. We'll be signing out here. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.